Hey guys. Tonight we're stepping into a world you probably wouldn't last 5 minutes in. It's winter, somewhere in 14th century Europe, and snow has swallowed everything in silence. The kind that makes the air so sharp it bites at your lungs. The kind of cold that turns even candle wax brittle. You're not a noble or a monk or even a peasant with a roof. You're one of the forgotten, the wanderers, the homeless, the ones sleeping under the mercy of a frozen sky. And trust me, you wouldn't survive this week without a miracle. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where and when you're listening from. Maybe it's warm where you are. Or maybe you can see your breath too. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The street is your home tonight. Cobblestones slick with frost. The stench of yesterday's market clinging to the air. You walk, no, shuffle. Because your legs are stiff from the cold. Around you, the city of Bruges, or maybe London, or Paris, depending on which forgotten corner of the map you've landed on, breathes unevenly through its chimneys. Warmth exists, but always behind a door you can't open. You pass by the butcher's stalls, now ghostly in the moonlight. The wooden counters are bare, but the smell of animal fat lingers, a cruel perfume when your stomach growls like a stray dog. A rat darts across your foot. You don't flinch, you envy its fur. There's a beggar by the water trough, his hands cupped around a candle stub. You stop to share its faint heat, both of you pretending it helps. His beard has frozen into tiny white daggers. Cold one, he mutters, and laughs, a dry, humorless sound. You nod. You've both been saying that every night since the frost began. In the Middle Ages, being homeless wasn't a phase. It was an identity, stamped on you by plague, famine, or war. Maybe your village was burned during some baron's feud. Maybe disease took your family and left you drifting from town to town. Or maybe, you just fell out of luck. That was enough to erase you. No one wrote about people like you. The chronicles preferred kings, not the ones dying quietly behind the tavern. Still, even in misery, people found ways to cope. You remember the old trick of rubbing onion juice on your hands to keep them from cracking. The smell was awful, but it worked, sort of. A woman once told you that holding a warm potato in your pocket could trick your body into thinking it was safe. That's medieval psychology right there, primitive but optimistic. The town watch clanks past, their halberds glinting under torchlight. You pull deeper into the shadows. The law says vagrants can be whipped or branded. The irony isn't lost on you, starving, freezing, and still considered a criminal for existing. One of the guards spits near you, missing by inches. You wonder if it's worth the effort to hate him. Probably not. Hate takes energy. A distant bell tolls from the cathedral tower, its sound rolling through the icy air. Midnight. The monks inside are chanting in Latin, something about mercy. You mouth along in silence, hoping mercy comes in any language. You pass a group of children huddled around a dying fire. Their faces glow orange, ghost-like, their hands trembling. You sit beside them. One of them, no older than 8, holds a scrap of bread like a treasure. He breaks it in half and offers you a piece. It's hard as stone, but you chew slowly, as though tasting heaven. You mumble your thanks. He shrugs. It's old bread, he says. You almost laugh. Aren't we all? Somewhere in the dark, a dog howls. Another joins in. The sound is eerie but comforting, proof that life still refuses to give up. You lie down near the wall of a tanner's shop, where the stone radiates a whisper of warmth from the day's sun. You pull your rags close. The stars blur above you like ice shards. For a moment, you imagine what warmth feels like, not just temperature, but belonging. You remember stories about the saints who gave their cloaks to beggars. You wonder if they really did, or if the scribes just liked happy endings. Historians still debate whether St. Martin's act of charity was literal or symbolic. You decide it doesn't matter. The story itself keeps you warm enough to fall asleep. Your breath fogs in the night air. You trace it like smoke rising from a candle, fading into the darkness. Someone coughs nearby, a wet, rattling sound. The city sleeps. The poor do not. You drift in and out of shallow dreams, visions of food, fire, and sunlight, a warm blanket, a bed of straw that doesn't smell like mold, the sound of laughter instead of wind. And just before you slip fully into sleep, a snowflake lands on your cheek, delicate, temporary, gone in a blink. You smile faintly. Even winter can be gentle. Sometimes. Tomorrow will be another battle. But for now, you breathe, alive, in the frozen streets of the poor. The next morning creeps in like a reluctant guest, gray, cold, and far too early. You open your eyes to see frost blooming across your eyelashes, glittering like cruel little diamonds. For a moment, you think you've gone blind, but it's just the world frozen over again. Your back aches from the cobblestones. You try to stretch, but your joints protest with a sound like cracking wood. The church bell rings somewhere in the distance. You count the chimes. 6. Time for the monks to pray, and time for you to move before the guards find you. You gather your rags, shake off the snow, and start walking toward the abbey gates. If you're lucky, they'll open their doors this morning for alms. The streets are emptier now. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, carrying the smell of wood and baked bread, torture to someone who hasn't eaten since yesterday's crust. You keep walking anyway. Hunger sharpens your senses. You can almost track bakeries by scent alone. As you near the abbey, the stone walls rise ahead, tall and unwelcoming, but beyond those walls, there's warmth, fireplaces, soup pots, chanting voices. The monks don't own much themselves, but they believe giving to the poor brings them closer to heaven. You're counting on that theology today. A few others have gathered already, ragged men, widows, even a child clutching a bundle that might be a cat or might just be cloth. Everyone stands silently. The wind blows through your group like it's mocking you. Finally, the abbey door creaks open. A monk steps out, his robe dusted with flour from the kitchen. His face is pale, but his eyes are kind. Without a word, he sets down a large wooden basket filled with small loaves of bread, yesterday's leftovers. The smell makes your stomach twist. He nods once. Pax vobiscum. He murmurs, "Peace be with you." And then the quiet frenzy begins. Hands reach in from all sides. You wait your turn, because you've learned that patience often yields a better loaf than desperation. When it's finally your turn, you pick a piece of bread still faintly warm in the center. You whisper, "Thank you." even though the monk is already gone. You sit on a nearby stone, tearing off small bites, letting each one melt on your tongue. Bread isn't just food here, it's a miracle. You savor it like a feast. Behind you, two beggars argue over whose piece is bigger. One swings a stick, the other ducks and laughs. The fight dissolves into coughing fits. You almost smile. Even in misery, people still find the energy to be ridiculous. Nearby, a woman hums softly to herself as she feeds crumbs to pigeons. Her fingers are blue from the cold, but she looks serene, lost in her own rhythm. For a brief moment, the abbey courtyard feels like a sanctuary, a small, fragile pocket of humanity amid the chaos of medieval life. You glance up at the carved statues lining the abbey walls. Saints and angels stare down with stony faces. You wonder if they ever get tired of watching suffering. Do they blink when no one's looking? Do they feel pity? Or have they gone numb after centuries of this? The wind answers by howling through the cloister. You pull your rags tighter. Someone tells a story beside you, an old man with a voice rough as gravel. He says that during the Great Famine a century ago, the abbeys were the only places people could turn to. He claims monks baked bread from ground acorns and moss to keep everyone alive. They called it God's bread, he says, showing you his few remaining teeth. Tasted like dirt, but it kept you walking. Historians still debate whether that's true or just one of those desperate myths that spread when hope ran out. But as you lick the last crumbs from your fingers, you think, maybe a myth can feed the soul even when the stomach stays empty. The monk returns with a wooden ladle and a pot of something steaming. Hot water with herbs, he says, pouring it into wooden cups. You take one. The warmth burns your palms pleasantly. It's barely tea, just leaves and faith, but it feels like luxury. Blessed winter, the monk says softly as he passes. You nod, if you say so. He smiles faintly, as if he's heard that answer before. The crowd thins as people drift back to their corners of the city. Some will head to the market to beg, others to the docks, hoping for work unloading fish. You stay behind a little longer, sitting on the cold stone steps, watching your breath curl into the air. A bell chimes again. The monks begin chanting inside. Their voices echo faintly through the door, solemn, steady, almost hypnotic. You close your eyes. For a moment, the world doesn't hurt. Then the chant fades, replaced by the caw of crows overhead. You open your eyes to see one of them perched on a statue's head. Black feathers glinting like oil. It stares down at you as if judging your life choices. Don't look at me like that. You mutter. You'd beg too if you had thumbs. You chuckle softly at your own joke. Humor is another kind of fire. It keeps the cold from eating your thoughts. By midday, the abbey gates close again, and you shuffle away, back into the maze of narrow streets. The ground is slick with melting frost now, but the air feels sharper, clearer. You've eaten, you've survived another night. That's victory enough. As you walk, you notice the sunlight glinting off the stained glass windows of the abbey. For a fleeting moment, the colors spill across the snow, ruby, sapphire, gold. You pause to watch, and something inside you stirs. Maybe heaven isn't only for the rich. Maybe, just maybe, warmth can still reach even the forgotten. You pull your cloak tighter and head toward the bridge. following the faint smell of wood smoke and hope. The bridge looks almost beautiful from a distance. Morning light glints on its frost-covered stones, turning them silver. But as you step closer, beauty turns to survival. Beneath the archways, you can already see shapes moving, bundled in rags, curled like commas against the cold. This is your neighborhood now, the underside of the bridge, where the wind hisses through like a whispering ghost. You duck beneath the arch and the air immediately changes. The sound of the city fades, replaced by slow breathing, quiet coughing, and the occasional shuffle of a boot. Smoke from a tiny fire curls up toward the stone ceiling, smearing it with soot. It smells of damp wood and desperation. A man sitting near the fire nods to you. His beard is crusted with frost, his eyes half-lidded from exhaustion. "You got bread?" he asks. You hold up the crust you saved from the abbey. He grins, half his teeth missing, and gestures to the fire. "Then you got friends." You sit beside him. The fire is weak but warm enough to sting your fingers when you stretch them too close. Someone throws in a handful of straw, and it flares bright for a second before dying again. The heat is never steady. It flickers like hope. The group here is small, 4 men, 2 women, and an old hound curled up on a pile of rags. You recognize a few faces from the market, from the abbey steps. In the medieval city, you start to see the same ghosts again and again. "Coldest winter in years," one of the women mutters, pulling her shawl around her face. "Every winter's the coldest," another replies. "And tell the next one." You laugh quietly. It's true. People here measure time by how cruel the cold gets. You glance at the river. Its surface is crusted with thin ice, glimmering like glass. You can see where someone tried to break it, maybe to wash, maybe to drink, maybe both. The water below is dark and slow, whispering secrets to anyone who listens too long. A boy appears from the shadows, barefoot despite the snow. He's maybe 10. Though hunger makes it hard to tell. He's carrying a handful of twigs and a small clay pot. "Found something," he says proudly. He sets it down, revealing a few shriveled carrots and a dead rat. No one mocks him. They just nod. Protein is protein. One of the men, broad shoulders, face lined like old leather, takes a small knife from his belt. He works quietly, cleaning the animal with practiced efficiency. "Used to be a soldier," he says without looking up. "Now I fight dinner instead of men." You share your crust of bread. The boy breaks a carrot in half. The woman adds water from a flask. The soldier stirs it all into a muddy stew. When it starts to bubble, the smell fills the air, ugly, yet comforting. You cup your hands around the clay bowl when it's your turn. The liquid scalds your palms but warms your chest. You close your eyes, letting it linger on your tongue. It tastes like smoke, salt, and the faint memory of vegetables. You pretend it's soup from a noble's table. "Think the monks will open the baths this week?" someone asks. "Only if hell freezes over." Another snorts. "It already has," you say, and the group laughs. A ragged, coughing kind of laughter that still feels good. Humor, it turns out, survives longer than most people do. Outside, snow begins to fall again. The flakes drift through the cracks in the bridge, catching in your hair. The dog beside you shifts and presses closer. Its fur coarse but warm. You scratch its head absently. For a moment, the bridge feels almost like a home, a crooked, crumbling home, but one with fire, food, and company. You realize that's all anyone ever wanted in this century or any other. Someone hums a tune softly. A lullaby, maybe, or a hymn half forgotten. It fills the space between the arches like incense. You don't recognize the words, but the sound eases your mind. There's an old superstition about bridges in the Middle Ages, that they're liminal places. Thresholds between worlds. Spirits of the drowned are said to haunt them. You think about that as the wind moans through the stones. Maybe that's why people like you end up here. Maybe the living and the dead aren't so different after all. You take another sip of stew and stare into the fire. The flames twist into shapes, faces, towers, memories. You remember a time when you had walls around you. When the cold was just something that happened outside your window. You remember a laugh, a voice calling your name. You try to hold onto it, but it slips away like smoke. The soldier catches you staring. Thinking of home? He asks. You shrug, trying to. He nods. Don't. It hurts more that way. You smile faintly. He's right. Nostalgia is dangerous out here. It's a luxury you can't afford. The snow thickens until the world outside is a blur of white. One by one, your companions drift into uneasy sleep. Huddled together like spoons in a drawer. You wrap your arms around yourself and lean back against the cold stone wall. Through the gap in the bridge, you can just see the city's lanterns flickering across the river. Each one looks like a tiny promise of warmth you'll never touch. But they're beautiful nonetheless. You whisper a small prayer, half hope, half habit, not for salvation, not even for food, just for another morning. Above you, the bridge groans under the weight of carts passing overhead. Life continues, as it always does, indifferent and unstoppable. But down here, under the arch, the forgotten breathe, laugh, share stories, and endure. And in that quiet defiance, you find a strange kind of peace. By the time the sun sinks again, the city smells of smoke and roasted chestnuts. You can almost taste it from where you sit, though you're too far from the market to see the fires. The bridge shadows are stretching longer now, and cold air leaks in from the river like a patient thief. You've spent the day doing what the forgotten do best, staying unnoticed. But as the church bells call for vespers, you make your way toward the town square. That's where the real show begins tonight. Charity by candlelight. As the wealthy make their annual offering to prove their souls aren't as frozen as their hearts. You limp through narrow alleys, past shuttered windows and the sweet sour smell of refuse. Finally, you reach the open square. It's buzzing with life, torchlight flickering off polished armor and silk cloaks. The rich have come to perform their mercy. You stop at the edge of the crowd. Dozens of beggars are already kneeling, hands open, faces lifted like sunflowers. You join them, your knees pressing into the cold stone. The smell of incense drifts from the steps of the cathedral, thick enough to choke on. At the center, a nobleman stands beside a wooden cart. He's wrapped in velvet, his fur-lined collar bright against the night. Beside him, a priest reads prayers from a gilded book. "Blessed are those who give to the poor," he intones, "for their reward shall be great in heaven." The noble nods solemnly, then gestures for his servant to begin handing out coins. You don't believe in heaven anymore, but you do believe in copper. When the servant reaches you, he drops a small coin into your palm. It's cold, smooth, heavy with meaning. You want to thank him, but he's already turned away. His face blank. To him, you're not a person, you're part of the ceremony. The priest continues to bless. The noble continues to pose. And the townsfolk watch approvingly from behind their gloves. For a moment, everyone feels a little holier. You slip the coin into your pouch and glance around. A beggar beside you holds up his coin, kissing it dramatically. For my salvation, he declares. You grin. Mine's for a loaf and maybe a bad ale. He laughs, a real laugh this time. Bright and surprising. A few others chuckled too. Even charity can't drown humor. Still, there's a strange comfort in the ritual. The poor need the rich to feel virtuous. And the rich need the poor to feel redeemed. It's an unspoken bargain that keeps the world turning. A woman approaches with a basket of bread and dried apples. Her hands are soft, her perfume sharp with roses. She doesn't meet your eyes. But when she gives you a piece of fruit, she whispers, "Stay warm." You want to tell her warmth isn't something you own. It's something that happens to you. But you nod instead. Thank you. Behind her, a boy in fine clothes watches the scene wide-eyed. His father scolds him for getting too close. You wonder what story the boy will tell later. How the poor looked grateful. How the night smelled of piety and smoke. Maybe he'll even dream about you. A man in the crowd starts to sing, a hymn about charity and grace. The beggars join in, their voices cracked but strangely beautiful. You hum along quietly. The noble looks moved, perhaps imagining he's the hero of the song. The truth, of course, is less poetic. Charity in the Middle Ages wasn't purely kindness, it was insurance for the soul. People feared hell more than hunger, so they gave to ease their conscience. As one monk once wrote, "A coin in the poor man's hand is a key to heaven's gate." Historians still debate whether it truly helped the poor, or simply kept them quiet. The ceremony ends when the priest raises his hand in benediction. "May God shelter the needy this winter," he says. Then he retreats into the cathedral's golden light. The nobles follow, cloaks swirling, boots crunching on frost. The beggars scatter just as quickly, each clutching their coin like it's sacred. You stand for a moment, looking at the now empty cart. It's strange how quickly generosity turns into memory. You wander to the edge of the square and sit beside the fountain. Its water is frozen solid, the statue of a saint staring skyward as if asking for help himself. You flip your coin in the air, catching it between your fingers. It gleams faintly in the torchlight. For a moment, you consider giving it to the old man nearby whose hands are shaking too hard to hold his. But then your stomach growls. You sigh. "Sorry, friend, next miracle's on me." You head toward the marketplace tavern, where you can trade the coin for something hot. The streets are slick, your breath visible in the dark. A drunk stumbles past, humming an off-key tune about love and ale. You envy his ignorance. It must be nice to forget the cold that long. Inside the tavern, it's chaos. The air is thick with smoke, laughter, and spilled beer. You hand over your coin for a bowl of stew and find a spot near the door. Steam curls from the bowl, carrying the scent of onions and bone broth. You sip slowly, eyes half closed, pretending the warmth will last. A bard plucks a lute in the corner, singing about knights and fair maidens. You smile into your stew. He's never met one, you mutter, and the man beside you snorts in agreement. Later, when you step outside again, the square is empty. The torches have burned down to embers. The rich are asleep in feather beds, the poor are curled in corners. But the moon shines bright, painting the stones silver again. You hold your half-eaten apple, saved from earlier, and take a bite. It's sour, but it's real. Maybe charity isn't always pure. Maybe it's not meant to be. But tonight, it bought you food, warmth, and one small reason to keep walking. And sometimes, that's enough salvation for a lifetime. The smell hits you before the warmth does, a smoky sweetness drifting through the square, carried by the wind like a promise. Somewhere ahead, a small fire crackles, the kind of sound that makes your frozen hands twitch with longing. Fires are rare for the poor in winter. Wood costs more than bread. And getting caught stealing it can mean a flogging. But here, in the open market square, no one asks questions. You follow the scent and find them, a loose ring of figures hunched around a makeshift fire. Their faces glowing amber in the flicker. The flames dance in a broken iron basin, fed by whatever could burn, splintered crates, old straw, even a piece of a broken wagon wheel. The fire doesn't care what it eats, only that it keeps living. You understand that feeling. Evening, you mumble as you approach. A few heads lift. A gap-toothed man waves you in. Fire's free, friend, no toll tonight. You grin and sit beside him, rubbing your hands over the heat until they sting. The others are a mixed lot, beggars, widows, 2 apprentices who lost their masters to the plague, and a girl whose hair looks silver under the moonlight. They're all smiling, a little too brightly, as if pretending this fire is a hearth. Someone passes you a crust of bread. You break it in half automatically and hand the rest back. Share keeps luck alive, the man says approvingly. The fire pops loudly, sending sparks spiraling up toward the stars. For a moment, the whole square seems alive, shadows shifting, faces flickering between life and ghost. You realize how fragile the barrier is between warmth and death. A woman begins to hum softly. It's not a song you recognize, but the tune settles over the group like a blanket. Soon someone adds a whistle. Another claps a slow rhythm. It's not music, not really, but it's something like hope. The silver-haired girl stirs the fire with a stick. They say the Romans used to build braziers all along the roads for travelers. She says, "Can you imagine? Fire everywhere, no one cold." You smile faintly. They also had public baths and wine fountains. So either they were gods, or terrible planners. The group laughs. The sound is raspy but real. A man with a missing eye leans closer. Heard the king's men are taxing coal again. He mutters. Says it's to fund the war in France. You roll your eyes. Ah yes, nothing warms a peasant like the glory of someone else's war. More laughter. For a few minutes, the cold doesn't win. Someone produces a bottle, cheap ale, probably stolen or watered down, and passes it around. When it reaches you, you take a small sip. It's bitter, warm, and burns like courage. You cough, then smile. Perfect vintage, you say. You've got fancy taste for someone with no shoes. The man beside you says, chuckling, I like to suffer with class. You reply, and even the girl with silver hair snorts. The night deepens. Snow begins to fall again. Flakes drifting lazily into the firelight before melting on contact. Each spark that flies upward meets one falling down. Like the sky and earth are swapping warmth for cold. You lean back, staring at the cathedral spire looming in the distance. Its bell won't ring again until dawn. For now, the square belongs to you, the outcasts, the forgotten, the invisible warmth of humanity still refusing to die. A new arrival joins, an old tinker with a pack of broken tools. He nods politely and settles in. After a moment, he starts telling a story. Voice low and steady. Saw a man once, he says, who lit a fire so bright the sheriff came running. Thinking it was witchcraft, the man said, "No witch here. Just someone too cold to care about your laws." Sheriff left him alone after that. Everyone laughs, but you notice a few nods of recognition. You've all met that sheriff. In one form or another. Historians still debate whether medieval cities really allowed public fires for beggars, or if that was just wishful folklore. But you decide not to care. Truth and comfort rarely sleep in the same bed. As the night wears on, the fire burns lower. People begin to drift away, heading for corners, doorways, bridges, anywhere they can lie down unseen. You stay until the last ember glows faintly red. The silver-haired girl tosses in a scrap of parchment, watching it curled to ash. "That was a prayer," she says softly. "Did it work?" you ask. She shrugs. "We're still here, aren't we?" You nod. Maybe that's miracle enough. When the fire finally dies, you blow on your hands and look around the square. It's quiet again, the kind of quiet that's both beautiful and cruel. The moonlight paints everything pale. You pick up one of the last warm stones from the basin and slip it into your pocket. It's not much, but it'll keep your fingers from freezing before dawn. You turn toward the narrow streets, your breath clouding in front of you, the faint smell of smoke still clinging to your clothes. Behind you, a thin wisp of smoke rises into the night sky, your proof that life, however fragile, refuses to vanish without a little fight. And as you walk away, you realize something simple and stubborn. The fire may belong to the night, but the warmth, it belongs to those who dare to sit close enough. By now, the city has learned to sleep through the cold. But you haven't. The snow crunches under your bare soles as you move quietly toward the church. Drawn by the soft flicker of candles through the stained glass windows. It's Christmas Eve, or so you think. You've lost count of the days. But the bells, the hymns, and the faint smell of pine give it away. Tonight, even the heavens seem to hold their breath. The church stands like a beacon in the dark. Its great doors are closed, but a thin light spills through the cracks. You hover near the entrance, unsure whether to knock or just listen. From inside, voices rise in harmony, Latin prayers sung in long, echoing notes. You don't understand the words, but the sound wraps around you like a blanket. You press your palms against the cold wood of the door. It's warm on the other side. Just knowing that makes something ache in your chest. A shadow moves inside. The door opens slightly, and a monk peers out. His face is thin but kind, framed by the glow of candlelight. "You seek warmth?" he asks quietly. You nod. He glances around, then steps aside just enough for you to slip in. Only until dawn, he whispers. If the abbot sees you, I'll be cleaning floors until Easter. Inside, the church is dim but alive. Candles line the altar, flickering like tiny suns. The smell of incense mingles with that of wax and damp stone. You walk softly, afraid to disturb the silence. The monk gestures toward the narthex, the entry hall between the outer door and the nave. You can rest there. The wind doesn't reach as much. You find a corner near a pillar. Curl up, and exhale slowly. The stone floor is still cold, but not cruelly so. Around you, faint whispers of prayer drift like lullabies. The monk returns with a small cup of broth. From the feast, he says, offering it with a faint smile. Don't tell the brothers. You take it reverently. It's thin, salty, and wonderful. Thank you, you murmur. He nods once. Christ was born poor, he says softly, so the least we can do is let him sleep among his own. When he leaves, you sip the broth slowly, savoring each swallow. The warmth spreads through you, settling somewhere deep inside your ribs. For the first time in weeks, you feel human. The choir begins again, a hymn rising to fill the vaulted ceiling. The notes seem to shimmer against the stone, echoing like the heartbeat of something ancient and kind. You rest your head against the pillar and listen. You can almost see the scene in your mind, the monks in their simple robes. Their breath forming halos in the cold air. Their voices trembling but steady. Faith, you realize, is the poor man's last fire. Historians still argue about how churches treated the homeless. Some say they were turned away. Others that monasteries were the only refuge for the destitute. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, flickering like candlelight, part mercy, part rules. But tonight, mercy wins. You close your eyes. The hymn shifts to a gentler melody. The Latin words blur into rhythm, into warmth. You're half asleep when the door creaks open again. A few more wanderers shuffle in, an old woman clutching a rosary. A man wrapped in a torn cloak. A boy no older than 12. The monk ushers them toward your corner, smiling apologetically. You make space. The woman sinks down beside you, her bones creaking. Cold night, she whispers. Not anymore, you reply. She chuckles softly, her laugh like dry leaves. You've got faith, then? You shrug. Just good luck with monks. She hums approvingly. That's faith enough. The group settles in quietly. The boy curls up beside the pillar, his head against your arm. You don't move. His breathing evens out quickly, and you wonder if he's dreaming of angels or just bread. Outside, the wind howls, but the thick walls keep it at bay. Inside, the candles burn steadily, defying the storm. The monks continue their prayers, their voices rising and falling like waves against stone. You drift in and out of sleep, half listening, half floating. Somewhere in the blur, a thought crosses your mind, that maybe heaven isn't a place above, but a moment like this, warm, safe, fleeting, shared. Before dawn, the monk returns. Time, he whispers gently. The brothers will rise soon. You nod, rubbing your eyes. The others stir too, groaning softly. The boy shivers, and you pull part of your cloak over him before you go. At the door, the monk hands you a small scrap of bread wrapped in cloth. For the road, he says. You hesitate. Then ask, "Why help us?" He smiles faintly, because God might be watching. Or maybe he's sleeping here among you. Either way, it seems wise. You step out into the icy dawn. Snow still falls, soft and slow. The city is silent again. Wrapped in white, behind you, the church bells ring the first call to prayer, their sound rolling across the rooftops. You look back once, at the faint light glowing through the stained glass, and whisper, "Thank you." Then you turn and walk toward the river, your breath misting in the new morning light, the warmth of candle fire still flickering somewhere inside your chest. For the first time in a long time, you don't dread the cold. You carry a little piece of that church with you, fragile but real. The church fades behind you as the sky blushes gray with dawn. The streets are empty except for a few merchants hauling carts through the frost. You move toward the lower quarter, following your nose, because on mornings like this, the scent of boiling soup travels farther than prayer. Somewhere ahead, you hear laughter, the clinking of ladles, and the rhythm of wooden bowls being set down. Charity Day again. The Franciscans, bless their thin belts and enormous hearts, have opened their courtyard to anyone brave enough to queue in the cold. You join the line forming along the wall. Everyone looks the same this time of year. Bundled shapes of fabric and bone. Faces hidden beneath scarves. The air smells of smoke and cabbage, which to you is the perfume of survival. A friar with red cheeks and a wool hood moves down the line. Checking each person, all are welcome, he says gently, but no fighting, no shouting, no theft. You raise your hand, what about complaining? He grins, that's permitted, it's half the reason we're here. The people around you chuckle softly. And for a moment, the chill seems lighter. When it's your turn, you step into the courtyard. The scene is almost festive, if your idea of festivity includes mud, hunger, and steaming pots. A few friars ladle soup into clay bowls while others distribute coarse bread. There's a big wooden sign above the pot that reads Caritas. Charity. Simple, unpretentious, the most powerful word of the Middle Ages. You receive your portion, a bowl of thin broth, a chunk of carrot floating inside like treasure. You blow on it, the steam curling up into the cold morning air. You sit on a low step beside a group of others. Someone cracks a joke about how the soup tastes like confession water. You laugh, and hot broth sloshes over your fingers. Stinging but sweet. Got salt? A woman beside you asks. You shake your head, just gratitude. Useless seasoning, she mutters, but smiles anyway. The friar who served you earlier walks past again, carrying a basket of extra bread. You call after him, "Brother, what's in the soup today?" He glances back, a bit of turnip, some mercy, and a lot of water. Sounds divine. That's the point, he says, not missing a beat. You take another spoonful, closing your eyes. The warmth seeps into your body. Slow but steady, thawing something that's been frozen too long. You can almost feel your heartbeat returning to a normal rhythm. Hunger in winter dulls everything, senses, memory, willpower, but food, even humble soup, brings color back to the world. An old man across from you tells a story between gulps. Back in my village, he says, a friar once said soup is God's way of saying, I still believe in you. Did you believe him? You ask. He chuckles. While I was eating, Yes. You think of the friars who dedicate their lives to serving others. They own nothing, eat little, and yet somehow manage to give. It's absurd, noble, and deeply human. Maybe holiness isn't about rising above suffering, it's about kneeling beside it. Historians still debate how often monasteries truly fed the poor. Whether it was weekly, monthly, or only on holy days. But here and now, the facts don't matter. A warm bowl is proof enough of faith. As you scrape the last of the broth from your bowl, the friar rings a small bell. Enough for one more batch, he calls. The line grows again at the gate. Word travels faster than warmth. You notice a young friar struggling to keep the fire beneath the cauldron alive. You walk over and help him stack bits of wood, your fingers clumsy but determined. He looks surprised. You don't need to. I know. You interrupt, but I'm bored of feeling useless. He laughs quietly. Then you'll make an excellent monk. You grin. Too late for that. I already enjoy sinning. He nearly drops the ladle laughing. And a few others glance over, smiling. It feels strange to make someone laugh without needing payment. When the fire is steady again, you sit back and watch the steam rise. Do you ever get tired of helping us? You ask. He stirs the pot thoughtfully. Sometimes, but then I remember, if I were out there, I'd want someone to keep the fire going too. That answer stays with you. By midday, the last of the soup is gone. The friars collect empty bowls while people drift away, clutching their scraps of bread. You linger, reluctant to step back into the cold. The young friar pats your shoulder. Come again tomorrow. If there's enough barley, there'll be stew. You nod. I'll bring the appetite. He grins. That's all we ask. You leave the courtyard with a full belly and a lighter heart. Snowflakes land on your sleeves, melting instantly against your newly warmed skin. For once, they don't sting. The city hums quietly as the day fades. The poor, the monks, the nobles, all orbit around the same small sun of survival. Each pretending they're not the same kind of fragile. And as you turn back toward the bridge, you realize that in a winter like this, the difference between saint and sinner is only one bowl of soup. By midday the wind sharpens again, slicing down the narrow streets like a blade. You hunch deeper into your rags and tug at the rope you've tied around your waist, more out of habit than hope that it keeps the cold out. Around you, the city seems to shrink inside itself, shutters drawn, smoke coiling upward, footsteps vanishing fast. Only the poor remain visible. You pass a group of washerwomen huddled under an awning, their fingers red and raw as they beat clothes against the frozen edge of the river. Their laughter, brittle but brave, carries over the wind. You almost envy it. At the corner, a familiar figure waves you over, an old cobbler named Osric, who long ago gave up mending shoes and started mending people instead. He's sitting by a crumbling wall, surrounded by scraps of cloth, fur, and bits of twine. Come, come, he croaks. You'll freeze faster than a sinner at confession if you stand out there. You crouch beside him. He's sewing something, layers upon layers of fabric stitched together in chaotic brilliance. What is that supposed to be? You ask. He holds it up proudly, a patchwork cloak, made from every imaginable scrap, brown wool, a bit of sackcloth, even a strip of what might once have been a noble's curtain. Armor against the wind, he says. Ugly as sin but works like grace. You touch the fabric. It's thick, rough, and heavy, but warm. You selling? Selling? He snorts. Who here has money? I'd trade. Got anything worth a sleeve? You rummage through your pouch and pull out a small piece of metal, a bent spoon you've carried for weeks. He eyes it, shrugs, and cuts you a strip of cloth. Fair deal, he says. Keep the wind out of your bones. You tie it around your shoulders, feeling instantly richer. Where'd you learn to sew like that? From a monk who patched banners in the war. Osric replies. Said the secret's not in the thread, it's in the layering. You build warmth like you build a life. One mistake on top of another until it stops hurting. You grin. That might be the most accurate sermon I've ever heard. He chuckles, his eyes crinkling. And cheaper, too. Around you, others drift in and out, trading little things for scraps of warmth. One woman tears her skirt in half to give to her child. A man stuffs straw between two tunics, looking like a scarecrow that lost its field. You help a boy wrap his hands in rags soaked in animal fat. A trick someone once told you keeps the wind from biting too hard. Historians still argue about how the poor dressed in winter. Some say they layered rags and hay. Others claim they used old horse blankets or parchment scraps from monasteries. You suppose the truth is all of them, and anything else that didn't freeze solid. Osric squints up at you. You ever try ashes? You blink. Ashes? He nods. Rub a bit on your face. Keeps the frost from biting. Makes you look like a chimney. But at least your nose stays put. You laugh. Medieval skincare at its finest. He smirks. Better than the noble ladies and their goose fat creams. Smell like a kitchen. They do. You look around. Everyone here wears the same uniform of defiance. Patched cloaks. Wool caps. Feet wrapped in cloth tied with string. The city may call them beggars. But tonight, they look like survivors of a war against the weather itself. As afternoon fades, you help Osric collect bits of twine and cloth before he shuffles off toward the bridge. Got to find another soul to patch. He mutters. Too quiet. This city needs more stitches. You watch him go, a small, crooked silhouette disappearing into the snow. You decide to walk toward the market square, where the last embers of yesterday's fires still glow faintly. On the way, you spot a woman hanging animal skins outside a butcher's shop. You ask if she'll trade one for a day's work scraping hides. She studies you, then shrugs. Can't pay in coin, but you'll get what's left from the scraps. Deal. By the time you finish, your hands ache from the cold. But she keeps her word. She tosses you a thin strip of leather. Stiff but useful. You cut it into 2 pieces and tie them around your feet. They're not shoes, but there's something between you and the frost. When you walk again, it feels like walking on the idea of comfort. You pass a tavern where laughter spills out into the night. The smell of roasting meat twists in your stomach. For a moment, you picture yourself inside, by the fire. A cup in hand, your face flushed with warmth. But then a gust of wind brings you back to reality. You tug your new patchwork cloak tighter and keep walking. The moon rises, pale and watchful. You catch your reflection in a puddle of half-melted snow, a ghost wrapped in colorless cloth. You smile faintly. Not bad. You whisper. Not noble, but not dead. And in that moment, you realize how ingenious desperation can be. The cold might strip you of everything: home, dignity, name, but it can't take your creativity. As you reach the bridge again, you pass Osric asleep beneath the arch, his patchwork cloak pulled over his face. You tuck a small scrap of cloth beside him, the one you'd kept for yourself. Armor against the wind, you murmur. He doesn't stir, but you think maybe he hears you anyway. The river sighs beneath the ice, and somewhere above, the stars shiver. You settle down beside the wall, wrapped in your makeshift layers, and close your eyes. The night is long, but at least you're dressed for it. The wind cuts sharper the next morning, as if winter itself has grown tired of being polite. You wake to the sound of coughing, wet, rattling, endless. Not yours this time, but close by. Osric's voice follows, low and pained. You crawl toward him under the bridge. His hands tremble as he wraps a filthy rag around his chest. "Just a chill," he says, between wheezes. "The air's too clean lately. My lungs miss the smoke." You smile weakly, but worry curls in your stomach. Everyone coughs in winter, but some coughs linger, dig deep, and never leave. The silver-haired woman is there too, spooning something from a small pot. The smell is strange, sweet, earthy, faintly sour. "Here," she says, handing Osric a cracked cup. "It's a remedy my grandmother swore by." He sniffs it suspiciously. "Smells like swamp." "Tastes worse," she says. "Drink." He obeys, grimacing. "What's in it?" "Rye flour, honey, and a pinch of ground lichen." She answers, "Supposed to chase the cold from the lungs." "Or from the earth," you mutter. She glares, but her lips twitch. "It worked for my grandmother." "She's still alive?" "She's been dead a decade." You both laugh quietly, the kind of laughter people use to scare away fear. The truth is, illness stalks the poor like a patient hunter. The cold weakens everything: lungs, skin, will. A small cut turns black, a cough becomes a death sentence. No one writes about it, but the streets remember. Later that day, you wander into the marketplace searching for herbs. Not to buy, you have nothing to trade, but sometimes apothecaries throw out spoiled stock. You find one near the end of the lane, a crooked wooden booth reeking of vinegar and smoke. The herbalist, a man with spectacles so thick they magnify his eyes, watches you approach. "Cold weather's good for business," he says dryly. Everyone suddenly believes in medicine. You nod. "You ever believe in mercy?" He squints. "That one's not for sale." Still, you explain about your friend's cough. To your surprise, he listens. Then he rummages through a drawer and hands you a small bundle wrapped in parchment. Inside, dried thyme, onion skin, and a pinch of something that looks like soot. "Boil it in water," he says. "If he lives, tell people it was skill. If he doesn't, tell them it was fate." You grin. "Deal." He waves you off before you can thank him. Back under the bridge, you prepare the strange brew. The smell is pungent, but oddly comforting. Osric drinks it without complaint. "If I wake tomorrow," he says, "I'll start believing in magic." "You'll owe me a shoe." "At least," you reply. "Make it two, for running from death." That night, the group sits closer than usual. The air feels heavy. Not just from cold but from the collective ache of bodies fighting decay. Someone mentions an old superstition that sickness isn't a thing you catch but a spirit that sits on your chest, whispering your name until you answer. Then don't answer. The silver-haired woman says firmly. Pretend to be asleep. You nod. That's been my life plan for years. A few laugh, but others just shiver. You notice the boy, the same one from the Abbey, coughing too now. The sound is small, but it echoes in your head. You remember stories about winter remedies the poor swore by: boiling moss with honey, rubbing goose fat on the chest, even sleeping with onions under the armpits to draw out the sickness. Some of it worked, most didn't, but doing something always felt better than doing nothing. Historians still debate which medieval cures actually helped. Honey, for instance, truly has healing properties, soot and rags less so. But faith can sometimes trick the body into holding on longer. When morning comes, Osric is still breathing, barely, but breathing. You hand him another cup of the bitter brew. He grins weakly. Guess the lichen won. Guess you owe me shoes. You reply. He chuckles, then winces. If I had any, they'd be yours. Outside, the snow has stopped. Sunlight slips through cracks in the bridge, catching on the frost like tiny shards of gold. You sit there, watching it sparkle, listening to the faint rhythm of coughing that reminds you how fragile this life is. The silver-haired woman hums again, softer this time, her song weaving through the cold air like a lullaby for the half-alive. You think about how the world always finds ways to heal itself, through herbs, through warmth, through sheer stubbornness. Maybe people do too. You close your eyes and breathe in the smell of smoke, thyme, and damp stone. It's not pleasant, but it's proof that you're still here. And in a winter like this, that's the best medicine anyone can ask for. The cold never quite leaves. Even when the sun climbs reluctantly into the sky, the air feels thick and brittle, the kind that settles into your chest and stays there. You wake to the sound of iron-shod boots crunching on snow above the bridge, guards again. Or maybe merchants heading to the docks. Either way, you stay still until the sound fades. Osric's breathing has steadied. The strange remedy, against all logic, seems to have worked. You hand him a cup of melted snow. Drink slow, you say. He obeys, nodding, the steam from his breath curling upward like prayer smoke. I told you I'm hard to kill. He rasps. The Lord's been trying for years. You grin. You must be his favorite experiment. He laughs until he coughs, then waves you away. Go earn us some bread. I'll keep the dog company. You nod and pull yourself up into the daylight. The city glitters under ice, streets shining like polished bone. You make your way toward the main gate, where the watchmen are exchanging shifts. The market bells are ringing already, faint, metallic, impatient. Today you need luck. You wander past stalls draped with frost-covered canvas. Merchants shout half-heartedly about their wares. Smoked meat, wool scarves, wooden bowls. Few can afford them. You see one of the beggared children you know. The boy from the Abbey. Darting between legs, nimble as a cat, he spots you and grins, holding up a small scrap of bread like treasure. You give him a thumbs up and he disappears again, swallowed by the crowd. At the far end of the square, something unusual catches your eye. A wooden cart painted with the city's crest. Flanked by 2 guards. Behind it stands a man in the livery of the Guildhall. Reading aloud from a parchment. By order of His Majesty's Council. He declares, all able-bodied citizens are invited to assist in clearing the roads and thawing the wells. Payment in food and coin. 1 day's labor at a time. You blink. Work, for pay. It's rare enough to sound like myth. When the crowd hesitates, you step forward. Where? Everywhere. The guildman says. Start at the well near St. Aldhelm's Square. Bring your own tools if you have any. You glance at your hands. Got 2, you say. He smirks and makes a note on his parchment. That'll do. The work is brutal. You join a handful of men swinging hammers and picks at frozen ground. Breaking the thick ice sealing the well. The first strike sends pain up your arms like lightning. But with every swing, you feel a strange satisfaction, a purpose. However brief. Your breath clouds in front of you. Shards of ice scatter like glass. The sound of labor fills the square, the grunt of effort. The clang of metal, the occasional curse when fingers slip. After an hour, one of the younger workers collapses. Clutching his chest, the others rush to help. Wrapping him in cloaks, rubbing his arms, you watch silently. The realization hitting you again. Survival here depends on balance. Too much work. You die, too little. You starve. When the well finally cracks open, a cheer goes up. Water gushes out, muddy and dark at first. Then clear as crystal. Someone dips a cup and drinks. The rest follow. Laughing, crying, both. The guildman tosses each of you a small loaf and a copper coin. It lands in your palm warm from his pocket, and you stare at it for a moment before tucking it safely away. You can almost imagine it glowing. As you walk back toward the bridge, you stop by a stall selling herbs and boiled wine. The vendor, an older woman with bright eyes, eyes your coin suspiciously. You sure you can afford it? Barely, you say, but my lungs want to feel rich. She chuckles and fills a small wooden cup. The drink burns going down, but it spreads warmth through your chest like liquid courage. You buy a sprig of thyme with the leftover crumb of coin and tuck it behind your ear. When you return to the bridge, Osric and the dog are dozing. The silver-haired woman looks up as you enter. You look different, she says. Maybe that's because I'm rich now. You joke, holding up the loaf. Gasps of mock amazement ripple through the group. You tear it into pieces. Handing them around, Osric takes his with trembling fingers. You didn't have to share, he says quietly. I didn't have to live either. You reply, but here we are. As the light fades, you tell them about the well, about the crowd cheering, about water bursting free from the ice. Even the telling warms you. See, says the woman, the world still makes miracles. You nod slowly. Maybe it just needs a hammer first. That night, as you lie awake listening to the river sighing beneath the bridge, you hold the small copper coin in your hand. It's not much, but it gleams faintly in the moonlight. A reminder that even the forgotten can earn a little piece of the world back. Historians often debate how the destitute worked during hard winters, whether cities offered true aid or only punishment disguised as charity. But you know this. A man with frozen hands can still lift a hammer. And sometimes that's enough to thaw both stone and soul. You fall asleep with the coin clenched tight, dreaming of the sound of breaking ice and the laughter that followed. Morning again, though it's hard to tell where night ends and day begins. The sky is a dull smear of gray, and the air tastes like tin. Your breath curls upward in white ribbons as you trudge toward the monastery infirmary. You hadn't planned to come, but Osric's cough has deepened into something that rattles the ribs just to hear it. The monastery sits on the hill above the market, a fortress of quiet charity. You've passed it before, but never dared go inside. Beggars and wanderers usually keep their distance. Monasteries can be merciful, but they can also be wary. The line between sinner and patient is a thin one here. Still, you climb the hill. The snow squeaks under your feet. The dog follows, paws leaving little constellations behind you. When you reach the gate, a young novice greets you with a start. He looks no older than 16, face red from the cold. "What do you need?" he asks. You point over your shoulder toward the bridge. A friend, sick, cough that sounds like thunder. The novice frowns, but nods. "Bring him, slowly. The brothers will see what they can do." You hurry back, heart pounding with something like relief. Osric grumbles the entire way up the hill about monks, about stairs, about how he'd rather die under a bridge than on one of their straw beds, but you notice he doesn't stop walking. Inside, the air smells of vinegar and herbs. Rows of pallets line the walls, each occupied by some shivering body. The sound of coughing fills the room like distant surf. A monk with kind eyes and a gray beard approaches. "Lay him there," he says, pointing to a corner bed. "And you, wash your hands. There's a bucket by the door." You obey, dipping your fingers into freezing water. He examines Osric gently, listening to his breathing, then nods toward another monk. "Honey, mustard, boil the mixture." Osric groans. "That sounds like punishment." "It is," the monk says evenly, "for being mortal." You hide a smile. He turns to you. "He'll stay a few days. You can visit if you bring wood for the fires." "Wood?" You repeat. "I'll bring a forest." The monk raises an eyebrow. "One armful at a time will do." You spend the afternoon hauling branches from the edges of town. The work is hard, but your muscles remember yesterday's rhythm. The cracking of ice, the ache that means you're still alive. When you return, smoke curls from the infirmary chimney. Inside, Osric sleeps, color faintly returning to his face. The gray-bearded monk catches you watching. "Your friend's strong," he says, "but he'll need warmth and patience." "Those are expensive," you reply. He smiles. "So is life." He leads you to a small bench by the fire. "Sit, rest." The sick teaches how to wait. You watch him tend to another patient, a young woman whose breath comes in shallow gasps. He adjusts the cloth on her forehead, murmuring a prayer you can't quite catch. You wonder if he prays for healing or simply for peace. After a while, he brings you a cup of something dark and sweet. "Mulled ale," he says. "Medicinal, of course." You take a sip. "If that's medicine, I'm ready to be a doctor." He laughs softly. "Then you already have the most important quality, gratitude." The hours slip by in the flicker of firelight. The infirmary hums with a quiet rhythm, spoon against bowl. Cough, whisper, prayer. You begin to understand why people come here, even if they don't believe in saints. Sometimes holiness isn't about faith, it's about order. About someone noticing that you're still breathing. Historians still debate whether medieval hospitals truly healed or merely kept the dying comfortable. But sitting here, you realize that comfort is healing when the world offers none. When night falls, you rise to leave. Osric opens one eye. You look too clean. He mutters. I washed my hands. You say. The monk threatened me. Good man. He mumbles. Don't let him convert you. Too late. You whisper. And he smiles faintly before sleep takes him again. Outside, the air feels sharper but less cruel. You carry a few leftover logs back toward the bridge. The dog trotting at your side. Snow crunches underfoot, and the sky glows faintly blue with moonlight. Halfway down the hill, you stop and look back. Through the infirmary window, you can see the flicker of firelight and the silhouettes of monks moving between beds. The sight is oddly comforting, like watching a lighthouse flicker for ships that may never arrive. You whisper into the cold, keep him warm. The wind doesn't answer, but it carries the faint smell of herbs and smoke. You take that as a yes. Back under the bridge, the silver-haired woman listens as you tell the story. A monastery bed, she says softly. That's as close to heaven as we get. You nod, and it smells better, too. The fire crackles faintly. You sit near it, thinking of Osric's slow, steady breathing and the monk's calm hands. Maybe faith is just the art of refusing despair. You pull your cloak around you, stroke the dog's fur, and stare into the embers. Somewhere up on the hill, mercy is still burning. And that, for tonight, is enough. The tavern door swings open, spilling laughter and heat into the freezing street. You hesitate outside, half afraid to step in. It's been weeks since you last dared. Too many eyes. Too little coin. But tonight the cold presses hard enough to outweigh pride. You push through the door. Warmth hits like a wave. The air smells of smoke, ale, and humanity, sweat, bread, damp wool. Your frozen hands tingle painfully as they thaw. The noise is thick. Voices arguing. Mugs clinking. A fiddle whining somewhere near the hearth. It's chaos, but glorious chaos. The sound of people pretending winter isn't winning. You find a corner seat near the fire. Close enough to feel its heat but far enough to stay invisible. The dog follows, curling up beneath your chair with a satisfied grunt. A serving woman eyes you suspiciously. Her tray loaded with mugs. You paying or praying? She asks. Little of both, you say, setting a single copper coin on the table. The one from the guild job. For ale, if it's honest. She snorts. None of it is, but it's wet. She pours you a cup and moves on. You sip carefully. The ale is weak, sour, but warm. It spreads through you like slow fire. Around you, life unfolds in fragments. A pair of men arguing about taxes. A bard tuning a battered lute. A merchant loudly boasting that he's survived 3 winters without losing a toe. You watch them all, invisible but present. The bard starts to play. The melody is crooked, a little drunk, but it fills the tavern with something close to joy. He sings of knights and dragons, of ladies with impossible hair and kings with impossible tempers. No one believes a word, but everyone listens anyway. A man beside you leans over. You look like you've seen better nights. He says, I've seen warmer ones. You reply, He laughs. Haven't we all? First drink of the day's the only one that feels like salvation. He raises his mug to frostbite's failure. You clinked yours against his. To survival's bad manners. He grins. Missing 2 teeth. That's the spirit. The bard changes tune, switching to a faster rhythm. A few brave souls rise to dance. Boots thumping against the wooden floor. The serving woman twirls between them. Skirts flashing. For a moment, you forget that outside these walls the world is frozen and cruel. It's strange how quickly warmth can trick the heart into feeling human again. You notice a monk sitting near the fire, hood down, sipping quietly, not one from Osric's monastery. But you recognize the type, a traveler, maybe a mendicant friar. He's listening to the bard with a half smile, one that looks like nostalgia. When he catches you staring, he raises his cup. Cold outside, he says simply. Always, you reply. He studies you for a moment, then gestures to the empty seat across from him. You move closer. The fire glows between you, painting his face gold. Where do you sleep? He asks. Where the river hums, you say. He nods, as if he understands. I used to sleep under bridges too. When my faith was still young, I thought the stones spoke to me, told me patience was a kind of prayer. You smile faintly. And now? Now I think they were just cold. You laugh, surprising yourself. He laughs too. He leans in. Do you know why taverns stay full in winter? You shrug. Because people are cold and stupid? Because, he says, eyes twinkling, fire and stories are the oldest medicines we have. You tilt your mug toward him. Then consider me a patient. He grins. And consider yourself healed until tomorrow. You talk a while longer. He tells you of the towns he's seen, the monasteries that trade prayer for bread. The pilgrims who walk barefoot through snow to feel closer to heaven. Faith, he says, isn't about churches or coins. It's about surviving the night. You think of Osric, the silver-haired woman, the monks on the hill, the dog asleep beneath your chair. Then we're saints already, you murmur. The monk chuckles. Maybe so. The saints were just the stubborn ones who refused to die politely. When the bard finishes his song, the room erupts in cheers. Someone buys him a drink, someone else starts another story. The warmth, the noise, it's intoxicating. For the first time in a long time, you feel like part of the world again. Historians still debate whether taverns in the Middle Ages served as havens or traps for the poor, places of fleeting comfort or slow ruin. The truth, you suspect, is both. Too much warmth burns, too little kills. The monk eventually rises, placing a few coins on the table. Keep your cup, he says. Tomorrow will be colder. Always is, you reply. He smiles sadly. That's why we keep lighting fires. After he leaves, you sit a while longer, watching the flames lick the edges of the hearth. You imagine each spark is a small defiance, a refusal to let the dark win. When you finally step outside, the cold hits like a slap. But you're ready. You pull your cloak tight, whistle for the dog, and start back toward the bridge. Behind you, the tavern's light glows against the snow like a heartbeat. You realize that warmth isn't a place, it's a moment, and tonight, you found one. And as you walk through the frozen streets, The tune the bard played still hums in your chest, carrying you home. The next morning greets you with fog, a dense, silvery curtain that swallows the city whole. Even the church spires vanish into it, leaving only their bells to prove they still exist. You wake beneath the bridge with the dog pressed against your ribs. Its steady warmth your one reliable mercy. Osric is back, paler but alive. He leans on a stick now, wrapped in layers of patched cloth that make him look like a walking quilt. "Miss me?" he croaks. You grin, like frostbite misses toes. He laughs and coughs at the same time. "Fair. The monks feed better than I remembered. Porridge. Real porridge. I almost confessed just to stay longer." "You're a changed man," you say. "Don't spread it around." The silver-haired woman joins you, her face half hidden by a scarf. You two sound cheerful. "I assume someone found food?" You reach into your pouch and pull out a small crust, your final piece from the tavern. "Feast of Kings." She snorts. "You're delusional, but I like the optimism." The fog thickens, blurring the edges of everything. Even sound seems to muffle inside it. Somewhere upriver, a faint voice calls out, singing a tune that's neither happy nor sad, just haunting. You follow the sound until you reach the marketplace. The fog has turned it into another world. Shapes move slowly. Lanterns glow like floating orbs, and the air smells faintly of roasting chestnuts. At the center of it all, a group of street performers are setting up, a pair of jugglers, a fiddler, and a woman with a painted tambourine. You stop to watch. The fiddler starts first, his bow scraping a mournful melody that cuts clean through the fog. Then the jugglers toss flaming torches into the air, brave souls in wool gloves, their faces glowing with reflected fire. The woman dances between them, her tambourine clinking in rhythm. You realize, suddenly, that you're smiling. When she notices you watching, she twirls closer, the coins sewn to her skirt chiming softly. "You look like someone who could use a song," she says, spinning the tambourine once before handing it to you. You blink. "I can't play." She shrugs. "Then shake it like the world owes you something." You laugh, surprised at how easily it happens, and give the tambourine a timid rattle. The crowd chuckles, and the fiddler nods approvingly. "There, a new recruit." They finish their song to scattered applause. A few coins clatter into the dancer's cup. Not many but enough. When she turns back to you, her eyes sparkle. "You've got timing," she says. "I've got hunger," you reply. Different kind of rhythm. "Same thing," she says, smiling. "That's why we play, to eat and be seen." She offers you half a roasted chestnut. You hesitate, then accept. It's still warm, smoky, perfect. "You perform every day?" you ask. "Every day there's a crowd," she says, "and when there isn't, we make one." You glance at the fog. You think anyone sees us. "Really?" "Maybe not clearly," she answers, "but they hear the sound. That's enough." Osric appears behind you, leaning on his stick. "You joining the circus now?" "Maybe," you say. "At least the applause is warmer than the bridge." He smirks. "And if they don't clap?" "Then I steal their tambourine." He laughs until he coughs again. The dancer hands him a cup of weak ale from her basket. "You've both got the look of wanderers," she says. "Come by tonight. We'll be by the north gate." We share what we earn. You thank her, slipping the tambourine back into her hands. As you walk away, you can still hear her humming through the fog. It's a tune that sticks in your head, simple, brave, and a little bit sad. Historians still argue whether medieval street performers were outcasts or artists, saints or sinners. But standing there in the fog, you understand what they truly were. Survivors who turned hunger into rhythm and loneliness into song. By dusk, you return to the bridge carrying a few chestnuts you managed to barter for with the coin she gave you. The group gathers close to the fire, and you tell them about the performers. Music? The silver-haired woman says dreamily. I almost forgot what that feels like. You toss a chestnut into her lap. Tastes better than it sounds. She grins and pops it into her mouth. Osric leans back against the wall. You planning to perform tomorrow? Maybe, you say, if the fog stays. It's easier to be brave when no one can see you clearly. He chuckles. That's life, isn't it? The dog yawns beside you, curling tighter. The river hums below, deep and steady. You close your eyes and imagine the tambourine's faint jingle, the fiddler's worn bow, the fire reflected in the dancer's eyes. For a moment, the world feels alive again, not just endured, but lived. You whisper to no one in particular. Maybe that's the trick, not surviving, but singing anyway. And though no one answers, the fog itself seems to nod in agreement, wrapping you all in its quiet applause. By the next evening, the fog has lifted, leaving the city raw and exposed again. The sky is clear, but the cold cuts deeper now that there's nothing left to soften it. You wake to a brittle silence, broken only by the faint creak of ice shifting along the river's edge. Osric is already awake, staring at the fire pit with the kind of intensity reserved for philosophers and starving men. No wood, he mutters, no miracle. Miracles are seasonal, you reply, standing and stretching. We'll have to order some from the monks. He laughs once, short, dry, but real. They're out of stock. Heaven's stingy in winter. The silver-haired woman joins you, rubbing her hands together. Not stingy, just distracted. There's too much dying to manage. You look away. She's not wrong. Down by the square, the streets are emptier than usual. No performers today, no markets. Just wind and footprints and a few hunched shapes moving like ghosts through the morning light. You wander with no particular aim until you hear the sound of a lute again, faint, hesitant. It's the bard from the tavern, playing alone near a frozen fountain. His fingers look stiff, his instrument dull with frost. But he keeps strumming. You drop the only thing you have, a single chestnut, into his open cap. He nods. Kind of you. Kind of foolish. You say, that was breakfast. He smiles. Then I owe you a song. He plays a slow tune this time. One that feels like it's made of smoke and memory. The melody winds through the square like breath on glass. When it ends, you sit in silence for a moment, reluctant to move. Ever play for the rich? You ask. Once, he says. They applauded politely and forgot me before dessert. You grin. The poor remember? They don't have the luxury of forgetting. He says simply. You leave him playing and head toward the alleys near the docks, where the smell of brine mixes with rotting wood. That's where you hear the voices, low, quick, urgent. You peer around the corner and see 3 men huddled in a circle, counting coins. Their cloaks are patched, but their boots are too new. Not beggars, not workers either. Thieves. You whisper. They notice you before you can leave. The tallest one stands, his hand resting casually on a knife hilt. Looking for company? You raise your hands. Just warmth. Warmth costs, he says, but we pay fair. You've got eyes. That's something. They explain their plan in quick whispers. The guild warehouse by the river, filled with sacks of grain meant for spring planting. We take 1, maybe 2, the tall one says. Sell it, eat for a week. No one starves except the rich. You hesitate. You've stolen before, a crust here, a coin there, but this feels different. Bigger, riskier, the kind of decision that brands you, not just feeds you. Still, hunger is a powerful negotiator. I'm in, you hear yourself say. That night, you creep along the frozen riverbank with them, the dog padding silently beside you. The warehouse looms above, dark, wide, unguarded but for a single torch flickering by the door. The men move quickly, practiced. One picks the lock, another slips inside. You follow, your heart hammering. Inside, the smell of grain and dust fills the air. You can almost taste it, life. Stored in burlap, they work fast, tying off small sacks, whispering curses when one splits. You fill your arms with as much as you can carry. Then, footsteps. A shout. Light floods the room as the night watch bursts in. Torches blazing. Thieves, someone roars. The others scatter. You drop your sack and dive behind a barrel, holding your breath as boots thunder past. The dog growls low in its throat. You grab its muzzle, whispering, "Quiet, please, for once in your life." One of the watchmen kicks the barrel. It shifts, but doesn't tip. His torchlight flashes across your face for an instant, and then he moves on, chasing the others out into the night. When the noise fades, you stay frozen a little longer. The dog whines softly. Finally, you crawl from your hiding spot and grab a handful of spilled grain from the floor. You don't take much, just enough to fill your pockets, enough to stay alive. You slip back through the shadows, past the river, past the frozen fountain where the bard's song still echoes in your head. By the time you reach the bridge, the others are gone. Only Osric waits, the fire faint but stubborn. He looks at you, sees the guilt, or maybe the exhaustion, and just nods. Eat first, he says, regret later. You sit beside him, scattering the grain onto a piece of cloth. The dog licks at it happily. Was it worth it? Osric asks quietly. You stare at the flickering embers. If we live till spring, maybe. He grunts. Then it's worth it. Historians still debate whether medieval thieves were heroes or villains, desperate survivors or moral failures. You suspect they were both. Hunger makes philosophers of everyone. As the fire dies, you lean back against the cold stone, your pockets still full of grain, your heart heavy with a different kind of weight. The river hums beneath the bridge, indifferent as ever, but above it, you and your small circle of ghosts are still breathing, and that, in this city of frost, feels dangerously close to victory. Snow again, heavier this time, falling in thick, lazy spirals that erase footprints before they even form. The city has gone silent beneath its weight, Chimneys smoke like watchful towers. And the river moves sluggishly under a crust of white. The bridge, your shelter, has become a cathedral of frost. Even the stones glitter as though pretending to be precious. Osric's cough has quieted for now. But his breath rattles like a broken bellows. The silver-haired woman sleeps with her scarf pulled over her face. The dog stirs occasionally, twitching in dreams, chasing something warmer than this life. You should sleep too, but the air feels strange tonight, thicker, slower, heavier with the sense of something ending. Then you hear it, a sound that doesn't belong, the creak of a cart wheel. You crawl toward the edge of the bridge and peer out. A wagon lumbers through the snow, drawn by a tired horse and escorted by two men holding lanterns. The horse's hooves strike the frozen cobbles with a muffled rhythm, slow, solemn. At first you think it's another grain delivery. But as the cart passes under the lamplight, you see what it carries, shrouded figures, laid neatly side by side. The plague cart. You pull back into the shadow and press your hand to your mouth. They still use them, even in winter. The sickness never really sleeps, it just hides, waiting for the weak and the cold. When the cart stops near the churchyard, the men climb down, their faces covered by cloths soaked in vinegar. They lift the bodies gently, one by one, stacking them in the frozen ground. A bell tolls faintly from the church tower. The sound is muffled by snow, almost tender. You whisper to no one, "They're still ringing for us." By dawn, the cart is gone. The churchyard looks smooth again, like nothing ever happened, but you can't unsee the way the snow swallowed them. When you return under the bridge, the dog greets you with a soft whine. Osric stirs. Couldn't sleep? Too quiet, you say. He studies your face, then sighs. They came for the dead again, didn't they? You nod. He rubs his temples. Every winter it's the same. Cold kills the body, but fear finishes the rest. You sit beside him, silent for a long while. Finally, he chuckles weakly. You know, back when I was an apprentice, I believed sickness was punishment. Thought the rich were spared because they prayed harder. And now? Now I think God just can't afford to heat all of heaven. You laugh, but it catches halfway in your throat. Later, the silver-haired woman wakes and joins you both. It's All Souls Week soon. She says, the priests will light candles for the departed. Will they light any for us? Osric asks. She smiles sadly. We're not gone yet. Technicality, he mutters. She begins humming, soft, slow, a tune you've heard before. A lullaby for no one in particular. You add your voice without meaning to. Humming along, even the dog perks up, ears twitching. In the dim light, the three of you become something more than beggars. A small choir against the cold. By noon, the hunger returns. You tear off the last of the bread you'd saved and divide it 3 ways. It tastes like dust, but you chew slowly, pretending it's enough. When the silver-haired woman finishes her share, she whispers, "My husband used to bake bread like this, before the war took the oven and the men who fed it." You nod. Was he kind? She smiles faintly. Kind enough to marry a fool who could outtalk a priest. He'd have liked you. Smart man. Then, you say. She laughs quietly, the sound fragile but real. The day drags on. Snow piles higher. The bridge feels smaller. Osric sleeps again, face turned toward the wall. The dog curls into your lap, its body trembling with dreams. You stare at the faint glow of the city lights beyond the river, wondering how many people are warm tonight. How many fires burn in houses that will never know what it costs to keep breathing here. Historians often write of famine, plague, and divine punishment, but rarely of this, the quiet endurance. The unrecorded dying that happens one breath at a time. They forget that history isn't written by survivors. It's written by those warm enough to hold a pen. You reach for the small copper coin you've been keeping. It's dull now, worn smooth from your fingers. You flip it once, catching it in your palm. Heads for spring, you whisper. Tails for another winter. It lands on your knee, edge down, balancing impossibly for a second before tipping toward the fire's glow. You take that as a sign. Night falls early. The wind howls through the arches, shaking loose flakes of frost that glitter like stars before they vanish. You pull the dog closer, lay your head back against the stone, and listen to the rhythm of sleeping breaths around you. You think of the cart, the candles, the graves smoothed by snow, and you decide, fiercely, quietly, that you will not join them yet. Tomorrow you'll find food, or work, or maybe just another story to tell the fire. But tonight, you're still here, and that's enough rebellion for one life. The next morning brings something almost forgotten, light. Thin, watery sunlight breaks through the clouds for the first time in weeks, glinting off the ice along the river like shards of glass. The city, for all its misery, looks almost beautiful again. You wake slowly, blinking at the brightness. The dog stretches beside you, yawning wide enough to show every tooth. Osric stirs too, muttering about the sun being a rude guest. But you can see the change in his face, the faint color returning to his cheeks. The life stubbornly clinging to him. The silver-haired woman sits near the bridge opening, letting the sunlight spill over her hands as if she's trying to remember its warmth. It's melting, she whispers. You look out at the streets. She's right, the snow is retreating, dripping from rooftops, pooling in small puddles that catch the light like mirrors. You can hear the city waking with it, creaking wagons, distant laughter, hammers striking thawed wood. The first thaw, you say softly. It's a strange feeling, relief mixed with fear. Winter has been your enemy, but also your reason. The cold gave you purpose, to endure, to survive one more day. Now that it's fading, you're left with the uneasy question of what comes next. Osric sits up slowly, stretching his aching limbs. I never thought I'd see green again, he says. You won't, you joke, not for a few weeks. He smirks, still counts. The dog trots to the water's edge, sniffing curiously at the breaking ice. A small piece floats by, turning lazily in the current. You watch it spin away and think of all the things winter took, faces, names, fragments of songs, and all the things it left behind. You. Breathing, against all logic. By midday, the air smells different, not clean, exactly, but alive. Damp earth, thawed rot, smoke, and somewhere far away, baking bread. The sound of a market bell carries faintly through the wind. Bread, you say out loud, as if testing the word's reality. The woman laughs. You've turned poet. No, you reply, just hungry. You and Osric decide to walk toward the square, leaving the bridge for the first time in days. The snow slushes underfoot, each step a wet, glorious mess. The dog splashes in puddles. Delighted. The marketplace looks almost like it did before winter's chokehold. Merchants shout half-heartedly. Children dart between stalls. A piper plays a cheerful tune that feels like defiance. The air hums with motion again. At one stall, you see a familiar face, the monk from the abbey. He's handing out loaves of dark rye. Smiling as he does. When he spots you, he waves. You made it through, he says. Barely, you reply, but I've upgraded from sinner to survivor. He laughs. That's a fine promotion. Here, he presses a loaf into your hands. You stare at it, speechless for a moment. It's still warm. I didn't confess, you say, half joking. He shrugs. Mercy doesn't always need an excuse. You break the bread and hand half to Osric, the other half to the woman. The three of you eat in silence, standing in the weak sunlight, letting the warmth and taste and reality of it sink in. It's not just food, it's proof. When you finish, the monk touches your arm lightly. There's work soon, he says. Fields to be cleared, walls to mend. The city always needs hands when winter breaks. You nod slowly. And pay? Enough to eat, he says. And a roof, if you stay honest. You smirk. I'll try honesty for a season. He chuckles and moves on. The square feels different now. The hopeless eyes of winter are gone, replaced by the cautious gaze of people remembering how to hope. You see the fiddler again, playing a lively reel this time. The silver-haired woman claps softly along. Even Osric hums. When you return to the bridge that night, you carry firewood, bread, and something else you can't name. The air beneath the arch feels lighter. The shadows less cruel. As the fire crackles, Osric stares into the flames. Strange, isn't it? He says. All winter we dreamt of this. Now it's here, and I almost miss the fight. You nod. Survival becomes a habit, hard to let go. He smiles faintly. You think we'll remember this? Years from now? Probably not, you say, but maybe the river will. Historians will later call this year one of the mild winters, an easy one. By their measure, they'll record crop counts, not coughs, market prices. Not moments like these, but you'll remember the thaw, the sound of dripping ice, the first bite of warm bread, the laughter that didn't echo this time but lingered. As the fire burns low, the dog curls against your side. You tilt your face toward the faint moonlight and close your eyes. The river keeps flowing, the snow keeps melting, and for the first time in months, the cold is just weather, not a sentence. You whisper into the quiet, "We made it." And this time, no one argues. You wake to birdsong. Not many, just a few. Faint and uncertain, but real. The kind of sound that once meant nothing, now means everything. You lie still, listening. Each chirp feels like a declaration. The world hasn't given up yet. The dog lifts its head, ears twitching, tail thumping lazily against your leg. Osric is already awake, sitting near the last embers of the fire. His hands hover above the faint heat, as though unwilling to believe it's really there. It's spring, he says softly, or something pretending to be. You nod. The air smells different again, less of smoke, more of wet earth. The river runs faster now, swollen with melted snow. The city above hums faintly with new life, footsteps, market cries, the creak of carts returning to work. The silver-haired woman stretches beside the wall, her breath no longer fog. The monks are ringing the morning bell. She says, "They only do that when the frost's gone for good." You smile. "Then we survived winter." "Barely," Osric mutters, but there's pride in his voice. You all climb out from under the bridge. The sun is pale but steady, spilling light over everything the snow tried to bury. Streets once choked with ice now glisten with puddles. Roofs drip. Cats stretch in doorways. Even the pigeons look cleaner somehow. You walk through it all slowly, as if afraid it might vanish if you moved too quickly. The warmth feels strange on your skin, almost intrusive after so much cold. At the market square, merchants are already setting up stalls again. Bread, fish, onions, ordinary things that now seem miraculous. You recognize a few faces from winter's worst nights. They nod at you, quietly acknowledging the shared miracle of endurance. The monk from before spots you near the well and waves. "You kept your promise," he says. Still breathing. "Trying to make it a habit." You answer. He laughs. "Good. The city needs hands. Come to the abbey tomorrow. We're rebuilding the garden." You blink. "You trust me with tools?" He grins. "After what you've survived, you'll define." Osric chuckles. "You'll kill their weeds and their patience." "Maybe both," you say. You spend the rest of the day wandering. You find the fiddler again, this time smiling as he tunes his instrument. Children toss him coins. He bows with exaggerated grace. The dancer you met in the fog claps her hands in rhythm, her skirt catching the sunlight. You toss her a chestnut from your pocket, the last one you'd saved. "Still warm?" she teases. "Always," you reply. For a while, the city feels like it belongs to you again. As dusk falls, you and your small band return to the bridge, not out of need, but habit. The space feels different now. Softer somehow. You light a small fire. Not for survival but ceremony. Osric produces a cup half filled with ale. Passes it around. "To warmth," he says. "To stubbornness," you add. The silver-haired woman raises her hands. Palms out to the flames. To the ones who didn't see spring. Silence settles after that. You all stare into the fire, letting the memory of the cold fade slowly, like smoke thinning into sky. You think of everything you've seen, the abbey gates and their quiet mercy, the fog and the music, the thieves and their hunger, the dead carried through snow. And yet, through all of it, something small and bright kept burning, a spark of humor, kindness, defiance. Historians will call this century brutal. They'll speak of plagues, famine, and the cruelty of kings. But they won't know this. The way a single loaf of bread felt like grace. The way laughter echoed under stone when laughter shouldn't have existed. The way strangers, forgotten by the world, built their own fragile version of heaven in the cold. You poke at the fire one last time. "What now?" you ask quietly. Osric shrugs. "We live." You smile. "Sounds complicated." "Always was," he says, "but we're experts now." The silver-haired woman leans back against the wall, her eyes half closed. "Tomorrow," she murmurs, "the river will run faster. Maybe we'll follow it. Maybe we'll stay. You listen to the river's endless whisper and think that either choice sounds like freedom. The dog curls beside you, sighing into sleep. The fire burns low, the air hums softly, and the world, miraculously, does not feel cruel. Just vast, quiet, and alive. You close your eyes. The heartbeat of the river steadies beneath you. A rhythm older than the city itself. For the first time in a long time, you don't dream of hunger or cold. You dream of sunlight, of open roads, of a bridge no longer needed. And as you drift away, your last thought is simple, weightless, and certain. We made it. End of script. Sweet dreams.